So we'll move on to our last roundtable now, which is a organic retailer roundtable. And joining us, we have Kathy Strange from Whole Foods. We have Tim Mahan from Wegmans and Ron Indovina from Wegmans as well. And similarly to the previous roundtables, I'll ask you to briefly introduce yourselves. I'll try to remember to call on you to remind you when to jump in. And then I'll ask a series of questions. And for anyone who has comments or questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box while we talk, and I will try to get to as many as we can. So we'll go ahead and start with Kathy, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Strange. Are you able to hear me? Just want to make sure. I work with Whole Foods Market, and I've been with them for 28 years. Many of you may not know, we've had our 40th anniversary in September. So I direct specialty food products, which include all of specialty dairy, including commodity and pre-packed cuts.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Kathy. Let's see. Tim, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. My name is Tim Mahan. I'm the group manager for dairy and frozen foods at Wegmans Food Markets. I've worked for Wegmans for 29 years. Prior to my current position, I oversaw the department called Nature's Marketplace at Wegmans, which is where we had our store within a store that focused on organic and all natural foods. Now it's such a big part of our business that it's integrated throughout the store.
Thanks, Tim. Ron.
Hi, my name is Ron Indovina. I worked at Wegmans for 44 years. I've had the pleasure to be working with Upstate for the last 17 or 18 years. And in 2006, we launched our organic milk with Upstate. And we're very fortunate to have a fresh product where most people have a UHT. And it's just been a pleasure to the high standards that Upstate has. We're very lucky to have them as a partner.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. So my first question to you is really centered around, this has come up a little bit as we've talked today about competition for organic dairy products. And so I'd love to see what your thoughts are as far as your business and what the biggest direct competitors for your organic dairy products are. Sorry, and we'll start with Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Happy to jump in. I think everyone on this call, one of the things you should be excited about is organic dairy is continuing to grow. So it certainly has hit peaks, but overall against packaged goods, it's continuing to grow. Another really good baseline is that household penetration of an organic product, over 90%. That's higher than coffee during the 1950s, where everyone thought it was everywhere. So I think just thinking about that as an opportunity. Now, dairy isn't in the top 5, but it's certainly in the top 15 of what a consumer's looking for to have, in their household. So I think thinking about that. And then the second thing is to also be thinking about, you were talking about the unique attributes by location and where you are. And I think New York, some amazing things, and Emily was talking about Oregon. A third of all organic buyers buy local products. They focus on local. So I think a key point just to this group, sharing with you as a retailer, how are you able to work with your end user to call that out, right? Because that's the consumer. They're buying organic, and then they're focusing on local. So how do you optimize that? I think for us, we've continued in Whole Foods Market to elevate our baseline entry now for even commodity cheese is not only free of synthetic growth hormones, but it's also non-GMO. And that's a standard we changed last year. So we are continuing to educate the consumers. The consumers want higher level of transparency. And I think the competition is within yourself to get better and to be able to embrace, many of you have communicated about today, whether it's regen agriculture is the new buzzword. What does that mean to you? How are you implementing on your farm? What are the things you're doing to differentiate yourself? So I think the competition is within yourself. It's not plant-based. You know, I hear that everywhere. Wisconsin, California, I continue to hear that. It's how do you elevate what you're doing? More specifically, focus on land / soil and animal welfare.
Yeah, so really pulling in those other attributes of dairy beyond the product itself necessarily. Tim, what are your thoughts on from your perspective in your business, the biggest competitors for organic dairy products?
Well, the first thing I would say is just to echo Kathy's comment that organic is continuing to outpace conventional in terms of our dairy sales. So we've obviously, as a retailer, had a pretty big year with everything that's going on. And as large as our center store increases have been and overall dairy increases have been, organic is continuing to outpace that growth. So that's good news for everybody. I would say in terms of, what's your biggest competition? I would say probably two things. I might disagree with Kathy a little bit. Our internal data is showing us that customers who are looking for, quote, the healthiest option on the shelf are in some cases turning towards plant-based. That's become the new thing, and we can see from purchase behavior on some of our top core customers that they've moved from organic over to plant-based. And so that is, I think that is, at least for our customers, a source of competition for organic is growing plant-based. I think the other challenge that we face is, again, depending on the level of sophistication of the customer, there's a lot of terms out there, non-GMO, A2, organic, grass-fed. Many customers do not have the time to thoroughly research and understand all those different attributes and exactly what they mean or what are differentiated. I'll use the example of eggs. Many customers, what they want is a cage-free egg. And if they determine that they can get that without having to go full-blown organic, then they might choose that. So I think just trying to understand what is the attribute that we really want to educate customers about and drive them towards. I think a lot of these attributes sort of siphon away pieces of the customer base, where organic is kind of a nice umbrella that captures everything that we're trying to accomplish with the products.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was thinking about the grass-fed term earlier. I think the producer roundtable was talking about that, and maybe even it started with Sarah. So maybe we'll come back to that in a minute. But Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
I do, thank you. And I share the same of Tim and Kathy before me. I think, though, one of the challenges that I've been a big proponent with is the Milk Marketing Board has lost their way in that they don't promote organic milk and they don't promote the benefits of milk. And we're up against these big companies that are promoting plant-based beverages, White Wave and Danone and Hood, and they're spending all kinds of marketing dollars saying how good it is compared to milk. And I just don't think we missed the whole protein craze. I just think that we're not getting our fair share from American Dairy to promote the benefit of milk.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective, and actually something that, I kind of wanted to play off of as well, that idea of where are those missed opportunities with your customers, and how, based on what you know about your customers, how can you, or we as an industry, really speak to them and increase the amount of organic dairy products that we can offer to people or sell to people.
At Wegmans, a number of years ago, we did a a format, and we had a menu magazine, and we did all about the American dairy farmer, and we had some huge success with that. We took all of our teams of dairy farmers to meet the dairy farmers and the hard work and efforts that they do. And I just don't think that message is getting out. I think the only message that got out is the Fairlife message. And no one's come back and said, hey, there's some hardworking families, long family farms, 5, 6 generations that have been milking cows for years and putting food on our table. No one's telling that story.
Yeah. And as Kathy, very, very correctly pointed out, dairy is local, and that's important to a lot of consumers. But for a lot of dairy products, there are local farmers who are producing that product and local processors who are processing that product. So, Kathy and Tim, do you have any additional thoughts on, based on what you know about your consumers? Are there any opportunities to increase sale, whether that's from like a, product line perspective, so new flavors or the components, higher protein, or even just like extended shelf life or that kind of thing? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Kathy, if you want to go first, and then we'll jump to Tim on that.
I'm not one of extended shelf life, because that's for, increasing levels of processing to be able to extend. And I don't think really our customers are looking for that. I know certainly some retailers want that simply because of their potential around terms. I did think one thing that was called out by both my partners on the panel is just nutritional benefits of dairy, really being able to understand the mineral components and the benefits across the board. I think the tendency is to focus on, carbon output from the animals, but not looking at really good grazing and how actually the neutralization takes place. I think there's opportunities to tell those stories. And then also just back to what Tim said around plant-based, no doubt plant-based is growing. It's still very small. But having said that, what we're finding is customers are turning more to flexitarian. So they're not doing total plant-based, they're integrating some plant-based. So maybe they're not eating meat 6 days, they're eating meat 4 days, and they're doing other things. So they could be getting their protein from other sources. So also, how do we further process dairy, different styles of cheese that are maybe unique? I think, opportunities around grilling cheese continue to present itself. Very popular around the world, but not so popular in the United States. So I think using them in those type of formats that could potentially influence beyond the fluid level of that. I think calling out A2 is a really good call out. For me, that's been something that's circled in dairy, I think, every 5 years for the past 25. But I think, how do we really, what is that story to tell, and how do we sell it, sell a unified story around it, not just Farmer X's story or Farmer Y's story. So I think there's great opportunities around a lot of products. But once again, we've kind of ridden the yogurt trend, and that's customers are only going to buy what's on sale. That's the true nature of that category. And so how do you really differentiate by talking about, with the focus on wellness, what does a milk or dairy product bring to that aspect as a consumer? And how can we be more transparent? What does the farmland really look like? What's it doing for my community? So I think that's a challenge to all of us as retailers, as farmers, as manufacturing partners.
I was muted. Just as a follow-up to that, Kathy, do you see any, particular need? We were talking about A2 earlier. Is that something that, from a retail perspective, this additional differentiation from like a product perspective, what are your thoughts on that, and what's needed from the sort of product innovation perspective from the retail side?
Well, I think there's opportunity. It's, as I said, that A2 has circled around for a while. I've measured it for about 20 years, every 5 years, but certainly the visibility around it's more. I mean, we just opened a store in downtown New York City, and everyone went wow, because we were featuring some products from a farmer that was touting A2. So, you know, no matter how many times I think these things come around and us that are in the profession, you know, maybe it's ahead of the cycle of the curve. Is it something that we can really share and really explain what it is? And also, what are the verifications around it? Currently, I'm working on a verification that requires genetic testing, right? Because if we say something, we have to have validation. That's the nature of transparency and statement. And then I think Tim pointed it out that there's a lot of catchwords. I mean, Whole Foods never uses the word natural anymore. We don't use sustainable unless it's quantifiable. And so it's really what are the words being used and what does it truly mean to the customer? So doing customer studies to understand that. I think that could be an advantage to all milk organizations to really understand end user and how they're going to directionally market that and create partners where, you know, where the marketing money is going, really hold them accountable to support the organic farmers on the same level that they're supporting artisan farmers that bring them big notoriety, maybe. What's the balance there?
Very good points. Tim, same question for you as far as your consumers and what do you see as potential opportunities to reach them more, either through, you know, just product changes, innovation, you know, modifying product components, that type of thing.
Well, I agree with Kathy's comment that customers are not necessarily becoming vegans with plant-based. There are certainly many more people that are just trying to move the pendulum a little bit from less animal products into more plant-based products, but not necessarily exclusive. What we see is when those customers do buy animal-based products, whether it's chicken or beef or milk or eggs, they want a more premium product. So they're still willing to spend dollars on those categories, but they want a more premium product when they do. So things like milk in glass that's low temp pasteurized, that has that old fashioned feel to it, or yogurt in glass or clay jars that has that artisan feel to it. Heirloom eggs, pasture raised eggs, those are all resonating with our customers right now. And those are significant sources of growth for us. I think, you know, an overall trend, certainly during COVID, and it'll be interesting to see how much this carries over, is just changes in consumer shopping patterns. So people are coming into the store less, but when they do come in, they're buying a lot more. So the average cart size is bigger, but the frequency of trips is lower. So I agree that customers are not necessarily interested in higher levels of processing to attain shelf life, but I think they would certainly be looking for products that do have longer shelf life if there was a way to do it with packaging innovation, or signaling on the container that the product is still good. You know, if I'm only going to the store once a week instead of, you know, twice or three times a week, I want the milk to last a little bit longer after I open it up than 7 days, especially if I'm paying a lot of money for it. So, you know, one product innovation that I'm always intrigued by is the Daisy Sour Cream has a squeeze bottle. And they've got a patented thing on their opening that prevents air from getting back into the package when you squeeze it out, and so you get a higher quality product with longer shelf life. So if there were opportunities to look at the packaging with dairy products and somehow work to extend shelf life a little bit, I think customers would definitely appreciate that. Then I think the other thing is the industry as a whole, and I'm particularly thinking about cooperatives, and innovation in dairy is relatively slow. And I think farmers are a conservative group of folks. The markets are so volatile that it's difficult to take a risk on buying new equipment or getting new lines to produce different kinds of products, when you're only making pennies, or you're not making any money at all as a farmer. But I think innovation and trying to develop new products has to be something that the industry looks at. And I think for a long time, the dairy industry didn't even want to acknowledge that plant-based business was a thing. But they're sitting on all the equipment that could manufacture different types of beverages beyond milk. And by doing that, they could lower their operating costs and allow them to be even more competitive with whether it's conventional or organic. So I think having the dairy industry as a whole, recognize the bigger picture and take advantages of some of that would be important.
Yeah, you brought up some really, really good points, Tim. Ron, do you have anything to add to what Tim and Kathy have talked about?
No, they covered a lot. I think don't be afraid of innovation. We work closely with a lot of manufacturers, and we'd be willing to test. We have internal data that we can show all kinds of information. Like one thing that's been on our mind is ultra filtered milk, like a Fairlife, but every processor I talk to is kind of reluctant to dab their feet into it. We understand it's probably some capex that they've got to spend, but look at where Fairlife has come in the last 4 or 5 years. It's becoming a major player, and we shouldn't be afraid to try some things. I mean, Valio was ahead of their time with this product years ago, and it failed for them. But then Fairlife picked it up along with Coke's marketing power. Here's another one where they had the marketing power of Coke to drive that product. We're sitting on dairy products that everyone's saying, hey, it's not good for you. Go to plant-based when it's really good for you. Especially, I even think Fauci said that we should be having vitamin D. Well, where do you get vitamin D? Glass of milk. It's pretty simple. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of marketing opportunities here for dairy that maybe we're missing a little bit. Wonderful. So we have a couple more minutes of our retail roundtable. So I want to open up to any questions that the group might have for our panelists. So if you have a question that you want to put in the chat box, go ahead and put a question in the chat box. If not, and you want to speak out loud, feel free to let us know, and we'll unmute you so you can ask a question. Give folks a minute to do that.
I think while people are doing that, just the ways we've also promoted organic products are specifically around Earth Day, to try and line that up where there's general awareness being created overall independent of specific organic messaging. September's Organic Month. We always work to feature products during that time. I think, as pointed out by Tim and Ron, just telling that story a little bit more effectively, that there are people and there are animals and that is somebody's land. I always try and tell that story at many different levels. It's not just about the end product. It's about how that product gets to you. So I think those are always great opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agreed. Okay, do we have any questions from the group, or? Okay, I think you guys covered a ton of great information, and just from on a personal note, I can confirm that the cart size has gotten tremendously larger in my household, and in fact gone from one cart to multiple carts. So I think really my family is driving that data from the Wegmans perspective, because definitely getting bigger. So thank you to Kathy and Tim and Ron. Really great discussion and a lot of good information.